Imagine this, you're in the emergency room, your heart is racing, and one wrong call could spark a lawsuit. Welcome to Health and Justice Uncovered, your no nonsense dive into the crossroads where law slams into medicine. From bedside chaos to Supreme Court showdown. Today, we are tackling with some of the most important pressing medico legal issues shaking India in 2025. And to guide us through, we have someone who knows the battlefield inside out. Dr. Sarika Gupta, she's both a physician and an advocate, author of book Law and Medicine, an in-depth study and many publications in international journals. Dr. Gupta, welcome to the show. Let's unpack the fascinating intersection of medicine and law. So before we start, ma'am, before we get into our main discussion, could you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your journey throughout from being a medical professional to an advocate?
See, a journey of a woman starts when she is born as a child. So, born in a Bania community, definitely it was not exactly my choice per se, but it was like the parents, they thought that going to engineering, then you have to have a corporate work background. And for my community, that time in late 70s, it was like girls were not sent to hostels and all. So, education was there definitely. But I was born to progressive parents, and I could have the privilege of going to the medical school, being the first person in the family who was in medical field, who went to the hostel and all. I'm emphasizing because that was a big deal, because they thought somebody who would go to a medical school or go to a hostel may not get a good spouse, may not get married even. But then they took the chance, and God helped me out with it, and I could clear it well. After coming into the medical field, I was working as a resident medical officer, and I could understand that medical field, so yes, everybody is practicing, but what we need is a good administration at the hospital.
Very true.
So that time I completed my hospital administration, MBA in hospital administration, which was a booming field around in 2005, and quite a novice thing to do. And I was leading a hospital. After leading the hospital, I could see many things happening around. Some things were negligence, some things were a lack of training. And from there, I was representing the hospital for some medico legal cases. And post that, I realized that the legal knowledge is very necessary. And post that, I did my law graduation and post graduation in law. And then the journey begins.
It's truly inspiring. Coming from a Bania community, most of the Bania people are into businesses. So coming from there and getting into medicine, and at that age, very early, being a girl child, it's very difficult, I guess.
Yeah.
That's truly inspiring. That's truly inspiring. Since you're very established in the medical field, what made you decide to pursue law as well as become an advocate? What was the turning point? One turning point where you thought, "Ki medical profession is good, but then now I need the knowledge of law."
So I could see many a times patients suffer, and many a times I saw the doctors suffer. So if you see some arrogant patient comes who doesn't know A and B and C of medical things, and he's challenging the doctor with all his audacity. And then they got the power of consumer forum in hand, and then challenging at the courts, and doctors needed protection. And some places I saw that the patients really are vulnerable. They don't know A, B and C of medical knowledge, and they were being like not treated well, I can say, or missed on something.
Misguided some
So
point.
I really thought that yes, this is necessary.
And combining two such professions is not at all easy at some point. But what challenges did you face while transitioning from medicine into the field of law, and how did you overcome the threat? Because being a medicine practitioner and coming to law, at some point your patients might look at you as if she might have been caught up in something. That's why she might be pursuing law. How did you tackle that with your patients? Did anyone come up with that, or?
No, the most difficult thing was going against the medical fraternity. See, you are a doctor yourself, then you are administrating the whole hospital, and then one day you are going to do cases against the hospital or the doctors pro patients.
Okay.
So your own fraternity feels like you are somebody who knows the in and out, and now you are going like वो बोलते हैं ना विभीषण in the Lanka, going against them, which was not totally that way. But then it was, yes, a lot of traumatic way treatment when they felt that you are now an outsider. In the legal field, they were like, okay, you are not an insider, so you're not an outsider and not an
Outsider, not an
insider for
insider.
both. So that
True.
was the tough thing.
Yeah, you were in between the both. Like
Yes.
one side you had your friends, one side you had the truth and justice. So ma'am, many of our listeners are students, and you have been to two career paths, and students nowadays are a bit confused. So, would you like to suggest them like how they should pursue a career, or should they go for any counseling before after their 12th standard or maybe after their 10th standard to choose a correct career path according to their own strengths and everything?
Yeah, definitely. The students should analyze themselves. They can take guidance from counselors and then decide what is their field of interest. Because graduation or just superficial specialty now doesn't work. It's an era of super specialty. So if you're choosing a career, like if you're choosing a career of medicine, you have to go till super specialty. If you're choosing a legal field, I would never suggest that you do all the cases in all the fields. You should choose a special field that you have interest in, and that interest of super specialty will develop only while you're doing your specialty. But before that, to choose a specialty, the child should understand, talk themselves. Now the kids are very smart.
Very true.
So now I see students coming to me and asking for counselors. So they can choose the career path definitely on their own with guidance of others, but decision should be always their own.
Now students are most of the children are AI children now. They are all
Yes.
artificial intelligence driven. So most of them are very much good with AI using it, and many of them know what career paths they have to choose by asking AI. So how much do you think like a counselor can make a difference compared to what an automated artificial intelligence system can
Huge
offer?
difference.
Huge
Both the
difference.
places, it's data what you put in, data output.
Output.
So if you're putting the right questions to the AI with all the details, it doesn't have the logic and thinking. It will just answer on that. So think of AI as your buddy and talk to AI, and then it gives you the answer. Versus the counselor has empathy, her own or his own experiences in life, and on that the driven thing. So I think they can try both and then come to a decision.
Plus an emotional connect with the
Yes.
student. Right. So, Dr. Gupta, when a patient comes to a hospital and if it's an emergency, most of the hospitals first put them through a filing and paperwork thing where they have to sign a consent form and everything. So, how should every step to be documented to ensure the ethical and legal part of it? Like, if I'm in emergency, if my parents are in emergency, I have to rush them to the hospital. If the doctor says ki you have to go and first do the paperwork and things, so is it ethical for them to ask, or does it have any legal angle to it that they have to first treat the emergency patient first and then the consent form and everything?
So after the renowned Parmanand Katara case, where you see a person meets with an accident and a neurological emergency, and then he's shifted from hospital to hospital and succumbs to death, there have been clear guidelines. Whenever a patient comes to the hospital, the first thing is not asking for consent or not asking for a deposit, but treating the patient.
Yes.
That is an emergency, I'm saying. So emergency, yes, the patient has to be treated first, and there are clear guidelines. So I don't think any hospital will dare to break these guidelines now. With the people getting more and more aware of their rights, definitely they'll treat the patient first. But yes, we should know the name of the patient. You should know who has brought the patient, and accordingly, those forms have to be filled because
Right.
those details are needed.
Totally. Ma'am, when doctors tell families that a patient is brain dead, it's one of the hardest moments they can face. With the Supreme Court's fresh September 8th ruling upholding brain death certification under the Transplantation of Human Organs and Tissues Act, how do hospitals counsel heartbroken relatives while ensuring that all the legal formalities are properly followed? So this question is basically contradicting the first question itself.
See, Manthan, this is a very tight rope to walk on. You see, there are black sheeps in every profession.
Yes.
So, organ transplant is a real boon. At the same time, it's a black sheep.
Right.
Now, as science advances, so advances the laws to protect. We have this law coming in recently because organ transplant started recently. Once it started, it was a lot of misused and manhandled, and therefore we had the law. After the law has come, I would definitely say that the cases of unethical transplantation have come down. So that's your question one. Unethical transplants have definitely come down because you have a state-wise register. So everybody is registered properly, and then you get your name and number, and it's displayed. Second question was about the brain dead. So brain dead is very difficult to answer and understand. Now you have an ethical committee, a medical committee in which the administrator of the hospital, a legal person, a person from the NGO, neuro department, everybody together comes and then declares the patient brain dead. After that also it's done twice. So declaration of brain dead itself is a tedious and a very meticulous process which is done in that way, and then because you have to keep all those documents.
Right. So, ma'am, before moving ahead, can you please tell our audience about your childhood, how many siblings you had, how it was being, around them, the fun part?
I belong to a nomadic tribe that way because dad was a officer with Maharashtra state government. So we got transferred from places to places. And like now you have so many apps and connectivity and cell phones. We did not. So we lost all our friends. So my schooling was at one place, then graduation. Graduation tak to still I have a connect. But I've lost all my friends. So my friends were only two, my siblings. Younger sister who is a professor at AIMS, and brother who is in the US now, software engineer. So they were the best pals, and I was the bully, being the eldest in the family.
You were the eldest in the family?
Yes, so I have two younger siblings.
Okay, so you were that one Hitler kind of sibling, or you were very
Not
chill
Hitler,
and calm?
because Hitler was mummy. So she is the Hitler in the family. I was a big bully.
I was assuming your father might be the Hitler because he was the officer in state government
No, he was busy with his work.
already. So he could have been, but
yeah, he's by profession an advocate. Yeah, so he was very much concerned for. He was with the state, so always with the cases of the state. So he was so much into his clients and all the poor class of people fighting for their rights and emotionally getting involved. So I've seen my dad getting emotionally involved with each and every case, and then coming back home and sulking on it and speaking about the judiciary and then speaking about the victory he had. So he was full of his work, empathy.
I'm assuming you're totally like your dad at some point.
No, I'm a little more
Share some
practical. I shouldn't lie.
He's more emotional.
He's more emotional. I'm a little more.
So now moving ahead, right to die. The Supreme Court in 2023 simplified passive euthanasia guidelines, and Karnataka is rolling out its own framework for terminally ill patients in 2025. How do these steps help patients choose a dignified exit while still protecting against the risk of misuse?
This is again a very important question that you have asked about the living wills. So now with the Supreme Court guidelines, you have a choice of writing a living will that when you are stuck in an ICU on a ventilator, what would you choose? Would you choose a little more life on that ventilator itself, or you choose to die in a dignified way? But misusing it is huge. Now you admit somebody who is not affording in an ICU averagely 10,000 per day. So for a person, it becomes difficult.
Yeah.
I'm talking in a charitable setup, 10K per day. If you speak about corporate, it goes to not less than 50,000 per day. So it's again, though we may not accept, but it is about the class of people. The richer class can afford. They have huge monies. So they can afford, they can keep the patient 1 year in the ICU. They can get the patient home, make a ICU at home. Now you have facility, right?
Yeah.
ICU can be made at home itself, and they are emotionally entangled to the person.
True.
They want to keep the person. That's a choice. But for the person who's not affording, so does that person does not have the right to take a chance and live?
Perfectly.
Or does that person should not be a scapegoat to the hospital billing? So, it's like a choice of the patient and of the medical professional as well. Now, talking about the legality of the same.
Yeah.
The guidelines are very strict. So we talk about guidelines which have been given. Active euthanasia not allowed in the country. How much ever you may be in pain, or you may decide that it's considered as suicide. So it's not allowed. Passive euthanasia, yes. Passive euthanasia is allowed in terminally ill cases, and then you have to approach the court with the hospital and documents and get a ruling. So there these guidelines are made to keep the black sheeps away, and misuse of law is not done.
So, is there any international country which allows passive euthanasia or active euthanasia? Any point?
Euthanasia, yes, in few countries they do allow.
Do they allow? And there are many extraordinary cases, like one from Kerala, where a brain dead mother gave birth to a healthy child. That really flips the usual narrative of brain death. How do such cases change the way we think about the intersection of medicine, law, and human hope?
That's the true, because above all is God. We may
Very
believe,
true.
some people may believe in God, some people may not, but then definitely there is some energy or nature or whatever form you may worship it into, or hope or positivity. These are all one form belief of people. So you don't know when you will be born or to whom you will be born. That's beyond your control. Same thing is when you will die is unknown. Today I can't say when I will die, though I may be knowing medical field or legal field or anything. When and how
Right.
I will die is beyond my control.
Totally.
What I can do is I can just keep the literature ready of what I choose for. And similarly, you see like this child born.
Yeah.
It was destiny to be born.
Destiny. So, ma'am, coming from a medical and science background, at some point आपको God और science के बीच में अगर choose करना हो, तो how do you tackle that?
See, God is very scientific. It's not that now you see, you've read that Jesus was born to Virgin Mary.
Yes,
Now you have surrogacy as well.
totally.
So religion and science go hand in
Hand in
hand.
hand.
Hand in hand.
Very true.
So I am a firm believer of God, but I don't believe in any practice as such or
Okay.
religion as such.
So, do you believe in devotion to, at a very long extent, or
See, devotion is again meditation.
okay?
So if you come down, what do you do to any God? You pray. Means
Right.
you come to yourself. You will submit yourself to the God you believe in.
Yes.
Same thing you do in meditation. In meditation, you come to a point, give rest to your mind, and you should have someone to depend on. And I can, if you don't take it otherwise, someone to blame on. So you're
Right.
crossing a road and you meet with an accident. You
Yeah.
cannot always say कि मेरा ही गलती था, because then you'll feel very negative.
Very negative.
Sometimes you say अरे भगवान का इच्छा था, गॉड का इच्छा था, तो ऐसा हो गया. So for psychology also, definitely everybody should believe in something, whatever way you may be believing it into, to live along.
Perfectly right. At some point, we all live with hope, and God at some point is our hope in our bad situations. Very well. So, moving ahead, with AI generated fakes and shell companies scamming, making headlines, wrote, like the September to 2025, Arvind Remedies rates that froze 15 lakh shares worth over 637 crore rupees. How can doctors ensure their prescription and practices stay clean? First question. And when it comes to strict executive liability in such cases, do you see it as a fair accountability or regulatory overkill? What safeguards could strike the right balance?
Now you're talking about the referrals and
Yes.
CUTs.
Now we are coming to the
Which
real
is there in
deal.
every field. So it's
Every
not
field.
that it's there in only medical field. Now legal field should also excuse me for that. But referrals are there in every field. Okay. Now the referrals are being given by check. So it's not even cash after the pharma industry whole scandal that came up with. So, definitely, what I feel in this is the fees of medical schools is the highest. You pay
Yes.
1.5 CR for a medical, being a medical graduate. So then it's like they compare themselves to the IT graduate who come out and start earning 12 LPA, 24
LPA,
LPA, and these guys are still struggling 1 or 2 years senior to the to that industry. But then yes, the doctor should always understand that while choosing this field, it's not only for money that they have chosen. Yes, they have chosen it for the good work they can do, the life that they can save. They have to get themselves out of the temptation. Now, this pharmaceutical industry is not owned by doctors. They
Not
are
at
pure
all.
business industry.
Yes.
You can't just blame the medical fraternity totally for writing them. You are luring them. You are giving them the greed. Okay, you write such many prescriptions and we'll sponsor a trip and all that. So that pharmaceutical industry should also go the ethical way, not only the medical practitioners. Medical practitioners are the end people who write it, but it starts all from the pharma.
Very well. So, yeah, so moving ahead, we have lined up very good questions ahead, and those are pretty tough ones for you as well. Are you ready for those?
Yeah,
So
I'm
let's
already
go.
on the roller coaster ride.
Totally. The clinical trials can be life saving, but when unethical, they raise issues of consent, adverse reactions, and weak oversight by CTRI boards. Should we focus on jailing sponsors for violations or strengthening self regulation? And with 2025 reforms like stricter CRO, registration, and faster approvals, aiming to curb unethical trials, do you see these as real progress or you just first step towards?
Now we flip. I tell you, this water has something not good for your health, injurious to your health,
Yeah,
which may cause blindness. Manthan, would you like to drink that water?
not at all.
Why not, Manthan? I'll pay you something. You have it. You drink
No,
it.
but still I care for my health and my well-being, so I won't have it.
So then, in clinical trials, you're giving the patient a consent form which states that you may be blind, you may get this, you may get that, and the patient is signing that and undercoming for a trial.
Yeah.
For what reason? Because he must not be getting his regular bread, clothing, or housing. So he is in so much of need, desperate need, that he is ready to take the trial on him. So that's the first thing. The person who is coming is not voluntarily coming, but for his needs. So can't be called actual voluntary, because voluntarily a person like you who affords everything won't like to have a test done on your own body.
Not at all.
So the thing is that tricky. Then you have trials on if the drug is safe for pregnant women. So to have a drug being safe on pregnant woman, where would you do the trial on? Few of the pregnant women as well.
Pregnant women as well, yeah.
So it's a whole lot of guinea pig kind of a thing. So the rules are really strict, the laws are really strict, but then you see poverty is a big thing. So you choose to die after eating food instead of dying of hunger. You see in this gas tragedy area, I would not name them. There are so many people who have suffered so badly. Now they are crippled. They can't work. They can't earn. So how do they eat? They give
Generation.
themselves for these medical trials, and who gives them? The agents. Now the major part of the money that should go to them if they are working under a trial to protect them, to give them proper nutrition, goes to these agents. Now these agents and the pharmaceutical companies and the people who approve take the bigger chunk. The end user gets a very small amount of money to survive. So what he does is he registers himself for multiple trials which he should not. Not legally, because that trial would be going wrong, but at the same time he's risking his own life. For what? For the poverty, for the need.
Poverty. It's a very less chunk of money, I guess. In India, Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act has come to effect. So, how do you think the implementation of this act is throughout the India right now? What are the on ground implementation of this act?
I've told you, whenever there is a technology, there is a development. Whenever there is a development, there is misuse. And whenever there is a misuse, there are the laws. This logic will come true in every place. So when the ultrasound machines came and it was easy to determine the gender of the child, and our country being a patriarchal society, more demand on male child, then started illegal termination, and then came the MTP Act. So everything is step by step, always the same. Now we have clear guidelines, and the government has really implemented it very well after many fetuses, female fetuses being found in bags and dustbins full of it. Now it is highly implemented, and still exception one or two may be there, but then it's not like ऐसा सर्रास पाहू शकतो तसं नाही आहे. आता वैसे पहले जैसा एकदम बहुत ही ज़्यादा आपको मिल रहा है कि बहुत ही टर्मिनेशंस हो रहे, वैसा नहीं है. क्लियर गाइडलाइंस है, बिलो 20 वीक्स, 20 to 24 वीक्स, अबाउट 24 वीक्स, तो सारे गाइडलाइंस को फॉलो किया जाता है. अब आप बाकी कंट्रीज में देखेंगे तो जेंडर रेवलेशन सेरेमनी होता है.
Yes.
बिकॉज वहां पर कुछ ऐसा ये नहीं है, पेट्रियार्कियल नहीं है. सो इफ माई ब्रदर इज इन द यूएस, दे आर गिवन द ऑप्शन. They are told, they are revealed the gender. In IVF also they are disclosed, and while having the second child they asked what do they want as a child. So but in our country still that option is not given, because people will choose only males. Then if they choose that, where do you get the would be mothers from?
Would be mothers from, yeah.
Because to get a child you need a mother, definitely.
The mother. At some point, Indian society is a little patriarchal at that point. And
Yeah, it's a
we are
patriarchal
improving.
society.
I feel we are improving.
Definitely we
with
are
education, we are
developing.
improving
Definitely.
now.
Yes, yes.
But there are still places where
It's like we have taught our daughters to go out and work, but
Yeah.
we did not teach our children to our sons to sit back and cook.
yes,
So progressive
that
means
is very
progressive
true.
is every daughter is told in a good family to go and study, earn. But then every boy in the house should be taught all the things like cooking, say,
Cooking and
cleaning and
everything.
mopping. So I always tell my son, "Hey, if you want to be married for long, so then
Please
you
do
have to
learn all
work.
these skills.
Yes, you have to
And now
work in
I'm
the house."
thinking, going down the lane, my mom has never taught me to, cook or whatever. But now she pushes me. Considering now women, they also want a husband who is equally, skillful the way they are with cooking and everything, managing the household. It's nice. We are moving to a very progressive society, I feel.
Yes, definitely.
So I'm moving ahead. Now, mental health care is very critical, and the treatment, the confidentiality which the practitioners share with the clients, it is very important. But if at some point I go to some psychologist and I share my things, gives me therapy, and if that information goes out, the practitioner itself, what all legally actions which can be taken, how does it governs the whole medical treatment, mental health treatment?
See, mental health is still a taboo. आपको सिर्फ एक ही वर्ड पता होता है, पागल, जो नहीं है.
नहीं है.
आप कितना भी बोलो, डिनाई करो, बट देन स्टिल मेंटल हेल्थ को जो एक्सेप्टेंस मिलना चाहिए, लाइक अ वायरल फ्लू, अभी तक मिला नहीं है. People do not want to accept that their family member has depression or anxiety, which is very normal. Now, depression and anxiety is a feeling which everybody of us have at a point of time,
Yes.
and we overcome it. But sometimes we are not able to overcome it. That time, first thing is counseling, talking. So earlier used to have dadi, nani in the family,
Yeah.
and those small talks that used
Small
to do
talks.
with each other,
Yes.
and that used to be counseling sessions in one way. Now you have official counselors,
Official.
because the family has become a nuclear family. You don't have a large number of siblings to talk to, and even if they are there, they are situated at various parts of the world, because world has become a global village now.
Yep.
Due to globalization, every third house mein there is somebody who's in another country. Earlier
Yes.
it was not like that. They used to be in the same house. In one bedroom, 10 people used to
10
sleep.
people.
Now everybody needs a separate house, because everybody's sleep cycle is different. They don't want to get disturbed. Somebody is an early riser, somebody is a night owl.
Privacy is very important now.
So yeah. So that's
Ma'am, now many students face anxiety, depression, every level of their life. And at some point, even I went through it when I was a child, when I was in some third, fourth standard. I got anxiety, but that point I was not aware this is anxiety. Neither my
that's
parents
the
were aware.
typical Gen Z.
Yeah, no one was aware about. But then later, I'm not a Gen Z, a 90s kid, but still. But later, after when I passed my 10th, 12th, I was a major. Then I realized, okay, this is something which is it's a health condition. It is affecting my mind. And then later, I still haven't been through therapy. I wish to. But do you think ki students at some point should be informed कि therapy is fine? It's not something कि तुम पागल हो गए हो.
डेफिनेटली उनको ओरिएंटेशन देना बहुत ज़रूरी है अबाउट मेंटल हेल्थ. एंड अभी के तो ज़्यादा ही ओरिएंटेड है. मीन्स आई फील द स्टूडेंट्स नाउ देमसेल्स आर लाइक, थोड़ा टीचर ने डांट दिया, थोड़ा पेरेंट्स ने डांट दिया तो मेरे को तो एंजाइटी हो गई, मुझे तो डिप्रेशन हो गया, मुझे तो भाई काउंसलिंग ही दे दो. सो इट शुड बी इन अ बैलेंस. नॉट लाइक आपको समझना चाहिए कि आपके नॉर्मल इमोशंस और वो इमोशंस का ओवर सर्ज कहाँ हो रहा है. This is all medical point of view. Legal point of view is, in that condition you don't know what you are speaking to the counselor or to the psychiatrist. Psychiatrist is someone who will give you medicines for the same. Counselors are those whom you talk and they treat you with therapies. So between the two there is a lot of confidentiality involved. And there the data of the patient or whatever he's spoken to you is highly confidential, and that is under the legal binding of patient rights, which has to be kept confidential. Really? Even if some doctor wants to publish it in their research, then it should be anonymous and with the permission of the patient.
Ma'am, so recently introduced Surrogacy Regulation Act 2021. Why do you think there is a legal need to, surrogacy, and why it is that important to bring regulations for such critical topic?
Surrogacy is a boon for the ones who really do not have children, because having a child is the biggest pleasure I feel in life. The happiest person you are and the most responsible you feel when you have a child, that is my generation will say. Now this recent generation, I don't know what do they have an opinion on this. They are becoming more self-centered or happy with themselves in the positive way. But the people who want to have a child and don't have a child due to any medical reasons, surrogacy is a boon. But as organ transplant was a boon and then misused, similarly was surrogacy being misused. Therefore, we have the Surrogacy Regulation Act 2021. So that's a very recent act. Now, in this act, the couples who have medical issues only are allowed to have surrogacy. Then secondly, only altruistic type of surrogacy. Altruistic means what? Means there is no give and take of money. So you cannot buy a lady to surrogate your child.
So how does it, how do they regulate then? Like if you're not paying the lady?
No, they pay for the hospital expenses, the insurance and the total procedure. So it's not that they pay the lady for the same. Like for money, she can't do it. She has to be a woman between the age of 25 to 35, married with her own child, because she also gets emotionally attached to the baby that is in the womb. Right?
Totally.
So all these guidelines are mentioned to avoid the misuse of surrogacy. It had become an instrument of fashion and wealth. भाई आपके पास बहुत पैसा है तो आप surrogacy कर रहे हो, और then you are showing the society that I have a child. No. Surrogacy is there for the people who really do not have children or have children with some terminal illness or a problem. Then only surrogacy is allowed. So misuse led to the law, which is really necessary.
Ma'am, like if the lady surrogate, if she has any medical issues after she gives birth to the child, those medical expenses
are being covered.
By the
whole procedure, effects and side effects of the procedures are being covered, but not that you pay specially for being a surrogate. Earlier, there were agents in between. Hospitals were acting as agents. Therefore, all this was regulated.
It was a business earlier, maybe. Now it's emotions when
therefore,
collide with business.
Therefore, legal field is so important. A legal outlook on the medical field is definitely.
So, Dr. Gupta, after everything we have discussed so far, from bedside dilemmas to landmark rulings, it could give one piece of if you could give one piece of advice to doctors, law students, to advocates practicing, as well as to your fellow colleagues, teachers, I would say, because you're a teaching faculty as well. Any one advice would you like to give each one of them? So,
I would say be ethical. There is a lot of temptation around you as a doctor or as an advocate or as a teacher or as a student. But ethics is the only thing. If you see any religious book also, it speaks about what is right and what needs to be done, from Gita to Bible to Quran. So you know that the form of human life exists on ethics. Legal comes when you are not following the ethics to make you follow the ethics. But if you're following the ethics, then you shouldn't be scared as a doctor for any rule or law. So ethics are most important. That is what I would say is the takeaway of the whole life cycle, or the whole life cycle of human being.
Very well. So, as we move towards the end of this episode, we want to leave our audience with some questions that go right to the core of this debate. They are not justified theoretical, they affect every citizen, every family. And we'd love to hear your perspective on them. So, ma'am, the world saw in 2020 which no one would have imagined. It was a tragedy. It was like lot of people lost their lives. Even we lost few of our very good doctors as well in the whole process. And I feel at that moment, the real Avengers, the real Superman, the real Batman, or the real gods at that point were the doctors who saved everyone. Yet we lost many. If you would like to express few words for them, the lost lives throughout the whole time, as well as towards all the medical practitioners, not just doctors, nurses, hospital staff. We lost many, and I feel if it comes from you, how exactly the situation was.
COVID-19 was one of the worst thing that happened to mankind. And the situation was really pathetic. I appreciate each and every medical staff who worked day and night without thinking of their own selves. Even when family, they kept themselves in isolation, away from the family, to protect the family. Still, they are standing as guards to work for the society. So kudos to the medical fraternity who worked throughout COVID-19. Some people may say vaccines made money, countries made money, but at the end of the day, the medical professionals really risked their life. Even if they may say the hospitals made a little money, but then the risk that was involved is incomparable. And we could come out of it only because of the selfless work of this fraternity.
Truly, a doctor's work towards the society is totally selfless, and it is actually good to be talking to you about everything. As we now move towards the end of this episode, I would like to ask Dr. Gupta if any of our viewers can contact you through any email ID or any phone number, so that they can get free consultation from you.
So, Agnel School of Law is having its own legal aid committee, and we do a lot of good work. We reach the places where people do not get legal aid and work for them. So, extending my support to the legal aid team of the Agnel School of Law, you can write down, if it's not personal, in the comments. If they are small answers, we can answer you there itself. But if it's a personal question, do write down to our email ID, or we are giving you a phone number on which you can WhatsApp or call about your concerns, and it will be answered. You'll get a free legal aid for sure.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. You guys can get the email ID and the phone number in the description. As of now, thank you everyone for watching this podcast. Do like, share, and subscribe. Again, Dr. Gupta, it was nice meeting you, nice talking to you. It was a wonderful experience for me as well. And we'll surely have a word in our next podcast about much more medical related issues, as well as advocacy and everything.
Thanks, Manthan, for calling me over. It was an honor and a pleasure to be on the podcast of Agnel School of Law, where I have studied the law, and to have a host like you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And here we sign off, guys. See you in the next episode. Thank you very much.